Your brain is literally under attack. While you're chasing cheap dopamine hits, your focus is rotting and your IQ is leaking away. But what if you could flip the switch? Today, we're escaping the pleasure trap to reclaim your mind with the 5 habits that actually build a genius. Habit 1. Forget about instant gratification. Have you ever sat down to do something important, like study or work on a big project, but suddenly felt the overwhelming urge to check your phone? You tell yourself it will only be for 30 seconds, but 40 minutes later, you are deep in a rabbit hole of random videos, feeling more tired than when you started. This isn't just a lack of willpower. This is your brain on a dopamine loop, and it is the single biggest obstacle standing between you and genius-level intelligence. To understand how to fix this, we have to look at the dark side of pleasure. Your brain evolved to reward you with a chemical called dopamine whenever you find something new or rewarding. In the past, this was great for survival. Today, however, giant tech companies have hacked this system. Every notification, every infinite scroll, and every short-form video is a massive spike of pleasure that your brain wasn't built to handle. When you constantly flood your system with these cheap highs, your brain tries to protect itself by turning down the sensitivity of your pleasure receptors. Think of it like a room that is too loud. Eventually, you just plug your ears. The problem is that once your ears are plugged, normal productive tasks like reading a difficult book or solving a complex problem feel physically painful because they don't provide enough stimulation. You aren't lazy. Your brain is just deaf to low-level stimulation. This is why the first habit of a genius is the dopamine fast. A genius understands that mental clarity is a resource that must be guarded. By intentionally stepping away from high stimulation triggers for a set period, you allow your brain to reset its baseline. Imagine waking up and not touching your phone for the first 2 hours. Imagine a Sunday where you don't use the internet at all. At first, you will feel an intense, itchy sense of boredom. Most people run away from this feeling, but a genius leans into it. When you sit in that boredom without reaching for a distraction, your brain begins to recalibrate. Suddenly, the boring task of thinking deeply becomes interesting again. If you're finding this helpful and want to protect your focus from the digital noise, it's a great time to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of this optimization journey. Once you reset your baseline, you stop being a slave to your impulses and start becoming the master of your mind. Habit 2. Blackout block. Most people spend their entire day in a state of semi-distraction. They work with a dozen tabs open, music playing in the background, and their phone sitting face up on the desk. They feel busy, but at the end of the day, they haven't actually moved the needle on anything that matters. This is the pleasure of busy work. It feels good to clear out 100 easy emails or organize your desktop icons because it gives you a tiny sense of accomplishment without requiring any real cognitive strain. Genius, however, is built in the shadows of total isolation. There is a specific biological process that happens when you focus intensely on one difficult task for a long period. This is called deep work. When you push your brain to its limit, you are actually signaling to your body to wrap your neural pathways in a fatty substance called myelin. Think of myelin like the insulation on a copper wire. The more insulation you have, the faster and more accurately the electrical signals move through your brain. Genius isn't necessarily having more brain cells, it is having better insulated wires that allow you to think faster and more clearly than everyone else. The dark side of this pleasure is that your brain is naturally lazy. It wants to conserve energy, so it will constantly try to trick you into switching back to something easy. Every time you just check a text message, you shatter that focus. Science shows it takes about 20 minutes to get back into a state of flow after a single interruption. If you check your phone every 15 minutes, you literally never reach the state of mind where genius ideas are born. You are living in a permanent state of mental surface tension, never diving deep into the water where the real treasures are hidden. The habit you must adopt is the 90-minute blackout block. During this time, you aren't just putting your phone on silent, you are removing it from the room entirely. You choose one single difficult task, the one you've been procrastinating on because it feels hard, and you stay with it. You don't get up for a snack, you don't check a quick fact on Google, and you don't switch tasks. By forcing your brain to stay in the zone of discomfort, you trigger the growth of that myelin. Over time, what felt like a grueling mental marathon becomes effortless. You'll find yourself solving in an hour what used to take you an entire day. Habit 3. Active brain training. We often treat our intelligence as if it is a fixed number, like our height. We assume we are born with a certain amount of brain power, and that's simply all we have to work with. However, the dark side of this belief is that it leads to mental stagnation. People spend years consuming information, watching documentaries, reading news, and listening to podcasts under the illusion that they are getting smarter. In reality, they are just collecting trivia. Passive consumption feels pleasurable because it mimics the feeling of learning, but it doesn't actually change the physical structure of your brain. To reach a level of genius, you have to move from passive consumption to active cognitive training. This brings us to the concept of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. One of the most effective, scientifically backed ways to do this is a habit called dual N-back training. This isn't a fun video game. It is a rigorous mental exercise designed to expand your working memory. Working memory is essentially the RAM of your brain. It is the space where you hold and manipulate different pieces of information at the same time. When you perform tasks like dual N-back, you are forcing your prefrontal cortex to handle a heavy load of incoming data while filtering out distractions. It feels like a workout for your mind because it literally is. As you struggle to remember a sequence of sounds and visual positions simultaneously, your brain is under stress. It is in this state of controlled stress that your brain realizes its current capacity isn't enough, and it begins to physically thicken the neural pathways in the areas responsible for logic and problem solving. It could be complex logic puzzles, learning a difficult programming language, or using a dedicated brain training app that focuses on fluid intelligence rather than just memory games. The key is that it must feel hard. If you are comfortable, you aren't growing. Most people quit these exercises because they don't provide the instant win pleasure they are used to from games or social media. But by leaning into that mental friction, you are building a brain that can hold more complex ideas, see patterns that others miss, and maintain high-level thought for hours on end. Habit 4. Strategic fasting. Most of us have been taught that we need 3 solid meals a day to keep our energy up. We've been conditioned to seek the pleasure of a full stomach as a sign of well-being. But there is a hidden biological tax on this constant indulgence. When your body is constantly digesting food, it is funneling a massive amount of energy and blood flow toward your gut and away from your brain. This often leads to the dreaded post-lunch slump, where your mental clarity vanishes and you find yourself staring blankly at a screen, unable to process simple information. From an evolutionary perspective, our ancestors didn't have the luxury of constant snacking. Their brains actually had to work better when they were hungry. If you were a hunter-gatherer who hadn't eaten in 24 hours, your brain needed to be sharp, focused, and creative to find your next meal. This is a survival mechanism that we can tap into today through the habit of intermittent fasting. When you stop eating for a specific window of time, your body enters a state called autophagy. Autophagy is essentially a cellular house cleaning process. Your body begins to identify old, damaged proteins and malfunctioning cells, including those in your brain, and recycles them for energy. It clears out the junk that causes brain fog and cognitive decline. More importantly, fasting increases the production of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Scientists often refer to BDNF as miracle grow for the brain. It encourages the growth of new neurons and strengthens the connections between existing ones. The habit for genius-level performance is to implement a 16-8 fasting window. This means you eat all your meals within an 8-hour block and fast for the remaining 16. Usually this just means skipping breakfast and having your first meal at noon. During that morning fasting period, you will notice a strange phenomenon. Instead of feeling tired, your mind becomes incredibly piercing and alert. You are utilizing your body's natural survival overclocking. While everyone else is bogged down by the pleasure of a heavy breakfast, you are using that fasted state to perform your most difficult mental work. You aren't just losing weight, you are cleaning your internal hardware and forcing your brain to operate at its highest possible frequency. Habit 5, the 3-2-1 sleep rule. We live in a culture that treats sleep as a luxury or even a sign of weakness. There is a strange, dark pleasure in staying up late, bathed in the blue light of our screens, reclaiming free time after a long day of work. We feel a sense of rebellion in those midnight hours, but this habit is the ultimate saboteur of genius. While you are awake, your brain cells are hard at work, creating metabolic waste products. One of these is a protein called beta amyloid. If this brain trash isn't cleared out, it builds up like physical sludge, slowing down your neurons and making complex thought nearly impossible. Genius-level intelligence requires a pristine internal environment, and that only happens during deep sleep through the activation of the glymphatic system. Think of the glymphatic system as a high-pressure power washer for your brain. When you enter deep sleep, the space between your brain cells increases by up to 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and flush away the toxic waste accumulated during the day. If you cut your sleep short or have poor sleep quality, you are essentially trying to run a high-performance engine that is filled with dirty oil. Beyond cleaning, sleep is also where the brain performs offline integration. During REM sleep, your brain takes the scattered pieces of information you learned during the day and looks for distant, non-obvious connections. This is the biological root of the aha moment. A genius isn't just someone who knows a lot, it's someone whose brain can connect two seemingly unrelated ideas to create something entirely new. Without proper sleep cycles, your brain never gets the chance to run these simulations, leaving you with a head full of facts, but no real wisdom. The final habit to master is the 3-2-1 sleep rule. To ensure your glymphatic system can work at full capacity, you must stop eating 3 hours before bed, stop working 2 hours before bed, and turn off all digital screens 1 hour before bed. By removing the pleasure of late-night snacking and mindless scrolling, you allow your core temperature to drop and your melatonin levels to rise naturally. This isn't just about resting, it's about a nightly mental deep clean that ensures you wake up with a brain that is literally brand new, refreshed, and ready to solve the problems that everyone else is too tired to even notice. Genius isn't a gift, it's a biological result of the choices you make every single day. By escaping the dark side of cheap pleasure and embracing these 5 habits, you are literally rebuilding a higher version of yourself. If you're ready to reclaim your focus, hit the like button and subscribe to join our community of high performers. Comment below with the one habit you're starting today. Let's hold each other accountable.